All right, welcome everybody to the Lakers Legacy podcast, where Show Timme basketball is here. Prime Timme basketball is here. It's Drew Timme's mustachioed world, and we are all just living in it, apparently. I'm your host, Jonathan Hernandez, and your Los Angeles Lakers snapped another mini losing streak by beating the Toronto Raptors the other night, 110-93, before they head out onto an 8-game road trip. Although one of those games is going to be in LA versus the Clippers on Thursday, so not as bad as it seems, but it was as important as it seemed that the Lakers handled business and got the win before they head out. Regardless, the Lakers are now 25-16, hovering in that 4-6 range in the Western Conference. Right now, they are currently 6th. Depending on what happens at the end of tonight, I don't know where they'll be, but yeah, hovering in the 4-6 range in the Western Conference standings. In the month of January, the Lakers are 5-5, pretty mid. And since the start of December, the Lakers are now 10-12. So from December 1st till today, the Lakers are just 10-12 in their last 22 games. So they have definitely been taking their lumps over the last 2 months. But good news, Austin Reeves, we should be getting an update from Austin Reeves soon, and hopefully he'll be back in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And on top of that, with the emergence of Mr. Drew Timme as a potential look in the rotation, could the Lakers maybe have found something, and could they potentially begin turning the tide on their, rusty December and January? We shall see. So in today's video, So in today's episode, I want to talk to you guys about the Lakers going big and making their bigs, namely Deandre Ayton and even a guy like Drew Timme, a more focal point of what they're trying to do. Seems like the most obvious thing, and yet the Lakers continually forget that they have a guy who can average 20 and 10 every night as their starting center. And then in the second half of the show, I actually want to, I'm going to have, second half of the show will be the typical, let's go through some trade target names, but the trade targets I'm going to bring up are specifically going to be the more established, professional, experienced versions of Drew Timme, because I like what Drew Timme has done in the 2 games that he's got in real rotation minutes. I'm just not sure whether we want to necessarily count on that for the rest of this season, and most particularly the playoffs, because one, Drew Timme is on a 2-way contract, and I doubt that the Lakers would standardize him to make him playoff eligible. So in that respect, given the fact that he seems to be becoming at least an important look in this Lakers scheme, what would trading for the more professional version of Drew Timme look like? So I have 6 names for you guys. We'll get to that during the second half of the show. Before we get to all of that, though, if I could please ask you guys to like this video, comment down below, and most importantly, hit subscribe, even though we blacked out there for like 3 or 5 minutes. Appreciate you guys for staying on. Everybody stop what you're doing, like the video. Also use your hype points right now. Mash the hype button if you're watching this on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. If you would like to help me out in any small way financially, please check out the links in the description box below. If you would like to help me out financially and get something in return, please consider becoming a Lakers Legacy member on the channel, on the YouTube channel, because there you will be able to gain access to all of the exclusive videos that I pump out on the weekly. They're more raw, they're more unplugged. They get into more of the nitty-gritty in the weeds stuff of the salary cap. And also I kind of workshop more of my crazier ideas there as well. So if you're looking for more out of the box stuff, become a Lakers Legacy YouTube channel member. I will make it worth your time, and planning to have some exclusive members only live streams for the trade deadline. So look out for that. Anyways, let us talk about Deandre Ayton, Drew Timme, Jackson Hayes. Less about Jackson Hayes since he's been steadily playing well. Jackson Hayes has been very steady this entire season. I kind of want to focus more on Deandre Ayton. So obviously the Lakers beat the Toronto Raptors last night. It was looking pretty shaky to begin that game. Before we get into that quirky lineup that JJ Redick put out in the second quarter, let's just talk about DeAndre Ayton first, because he's had a very bipolar up and down last 2 months where his motor has wavered. He hasn't looked as locked in and engaged as he was during the whole month of November, where I honestly didn't have any complaints. But I think, as we've seen, the concerns about DeAndre Ayton's inconsistent motor, I think more recently we have seen him like not jogging back as much, him hanging his head more, him fumbling passes more. This isn't entirely all of his fault. The onus is also on the coaching staff and his teammates, but I think DeAndre Ayton is a very externally motivated player, it seems at times, and when not all cylinders are firing for him, he can stumble pretty quickly, and it can become like a rolling avalanche of crap from that point on. But having said that, last night versus the Toronto Raptors, DeAndre Ayton, 25 points, 10 of 10 from the field, 13 rebounds, 1 block, super efficient from the field. Dominatin came back to play last night, and the Lakers needed him to. But it's crazy because there has been a running theme for the Lakers this season as it pertains to DeAndre Ayton and how DeAndre Ayton's play correlates with how well the Lakers are doing. Because the Lakers are 9-0 whenever Ayton scores 20 plus points. You would think that because of that, DeAndre Ayton would have scored 20 plus points more than 9 times this season. And yet last night was just his 9th time scoring 20 plus points. Now, in comparison to last season with the Blazers, he's already surpassed that mark. But anyways, DeAndre Ayton seems to be a pretty important barometer for how the Lakers as a whole are doing. And given the fact that I think the most disappointing part about this last stretch without Austin Reeves is DeAndre Ayton should have been scoring 20 plus points every single game that Austin Reeves was out. And if not 20, then at least 16 to 18 points on the nightly, And the fact that DeAndre Ayton has not only not been scoring 20 plus points consistently, but getting benched in the fourth quarter, again, it's not just the coaching staff's fault. It is also partially DeAndre's fault. Like, everybody shares in the blame pie of why DeAndre Ayton has been inconsistent in the, last month and a half, 2 months. But yeah, you look at a stat like that, the Lakers are 9-0 when Ayton scores 20 plus points. And then you look at the fact that the Lakers are also 12-0 whenever Ayton puts up at least 15 points and 10 rebounds. And then you look at another stat where it says the Lakers are 14-1 when they have at least 3 players score 20 plus points. And at this point in the season, I believe Ayton shows up the second most often in the list of 20-point trios that the Lakers have this season. So you look at all of these, milestones, and DeAndre Ayton seems to play a pretty important part in when the Lakers are winning, because when DeAndre Ayton plays well, when DeAndre Ayton is fed, the Lakers do well. So let the big man eat, and you will probably eat as well. So I know that sounds like very reductive. It's like easier said than done, because again, a large part of this falls on DeAndre Ayton as well, because he's not necessarily making life easy for Luka and LeBron at times when he's fumbling the ball around and putting the ball down and getting it stripped and whatnot. I just think that JJ Redick and the other players have to understand who DeAndre Ayton is as a player, understand his deficiencies, and continue to be more, patient with him, but more deliberate and almost force the issue, even if it looks ugly, because I think the payoff is worth it. Even if he's fumbling the ball around, even if he's getting turnovers, I know it's a frustrating experience watching DeAndre Ayton at times, especially when he doesn't have it or doesn't look as engaged or locked in. And I know that we want Ayton. I know Ayton isn't as explosive and quick twitch as we would want at times. Again, I know that he fumbles the ball around, puts it on the floor, gets it stripped like he's Kwame Brown. But I think if we're patient with him and he's able to find a rhythm, that dude's touch is insane. And he can really cook in that no man's land mid range area the way that he did against the Raptors last night. And that really puts teams in a catch 22 situation, you know? So I don't know. I feel like the Lakers this season tend to forget that they have a guy in Deandre Ayton who can score 20 plus points on any given night. And the fact that our offense has looked so stuck in the mud and we haven't been more relentlessly turning to Ayton to help that cause, it's a little bit frustrating when the answer seems kind of obvious, you know? So the whole main point here is we need to keep feeding Deandre Ayton. We need to let Ayton eat a little bit because he seems to be the barometer of how well this team is doing. It's almost like, I made that video before the season began, like, is DeAndre Ayton the D'Angelo Russell of centers? And in a lot of ways he is, but especially in this way as well, because if you remember when D'Lo was on this team, it's like LeBron had this quote about D'Lo. When D'Lo does well, everybody does well. And it's sort of the same, notion with DeAndre Ayton. If he's not involved, if he's not locked in, it's kind of up for grabs what the Lakers are going to do on any given night. And we see kind of like hero ISO ball, rule the day. But I feel like if the Lakers have a consistent game plan to make sure that DeAndre Ayton is involved from the start, and then even if it looks like he's not engaged or even if it looks like he's waning, just keep feeding him the ball. Eventually, or hopefully it's going to pay off, So last night it paid off against the Raptors, and so kudos to DeAndre Ayton. Now let's talk about Drew Timme, because the last two games for Drew Timme, obviously he had that career high game against the Portland Trail Blazers where he was the Lakers' primary backup big, put up 21 points, 4 assists, knocked down 3 of 4 from 3. And then last night, even though it was a much more muted performance from him with only 3 points, 1 of 4 from the field, I think he had like 2 assists or whatever. Drew Timme's insertion into the rotation, and particularly in that lineup, that giant lineup that JJ Redick threw out in the second quarter, it really sparked the Lakers and really turned the game around. I don't even know what specific position Drew Timme was playing when he was deployed, but he was playing like anywhere from the shooting guard spot to the power forward position, because the unit that got the Lakers back in the game was Marcus Smart, LeBron James, Jared Vanderbilt, Drew Timme, and DeAndre Ayton. I thought that unit would be super clunky, and yet they were surprisingly fire. Like this giant behemoth of a 5-man unit with Marcus Smart being the small bully ball tank of a 6'3" guard manning the point guard position. But outside of Marcus Smart, everybody was huge. But on top of that, it was a good blend of size and skill. And in that unit, the Lakers ended up going on a 14-4 run. They got back into the game. I believe when that unit first entered the second quarter, the Lakers were down like 23-30. They ended up 37-34. And what's crazy is they only gave up 4 points in that time span that unit was on the floor together, which is insane because Drew Timme is clearly not known for his defense, but I think that unit kind of shows you a blueprint of how Drew Timme can thrive. Because clearly, I mean, Drew Timme lacks the athleticism. He lacks the foot speed. I like that he's been trying and hustling to the best of his abilities out there. But when you can flank him with all of these physical, long, big defenders like Marcus Smart, LeBron James, Jared Vanderbilt, and DeAndre Ayton, you can see how it works. And you can see how I don't even think we needed to hide Drew Timme. We were playing some modified zone at times, but if Drew Timme is just willing to try and be competitive to the best of his abilities, we can survive, surprisingly. And again, we only gave up 4 points while that in 3 minutes while that group was out there. And also, those 5 guys, if we look at this, I believe they were the only 5 Lakers. Okay, so they were the only 5 Lakers in the second quarter with a plus minus rating. And if you look at, let's see, Jared Vanderbilt had a team high plus 25, Drew Timme plus 17, LeBron James plus 18, DeAndre Ayton plus 20. All of that is stemming from, or not all of it, a large part of that is stemming from their bang out second quarter together. And so, I don't know, that unit was sort of a revelation for me. The Lakers going super big and playing Drew Timme next to DeAndre Ayton. You sort of, again, playing him with all of these physical big guys with size, not only size, but skill, helped mitigate whatever defensive deficiencies and slowness that, a lot of us, mainly me, may have been super scared about and worried about in terms of whether or not he could hold up in the NBA. And this was against a very athletic, fast Raptors team. And so, yeah, that was eye-opening to me. And I think this Drew Timme, DeAndre Ayton thing, I think we're going to see more of it. I think we should see more of it, this sort of like Twin Towers look. And Drew Timme, he's not a center, or he shouldn't be a center. You can play small ball 5 units with him, but given his defensive deficiencies, you do not want him to be your defensive paint anchor. You want him next to a defensive big man like DeAndre Ayton, even though DeAndre Ayton obviously isn't like the perfect image of a defensive big man, but he'll do. And so I like what I saw in the small sample size of, Drew Timme next to DeAndre Ayton, Drew Timme helping space the floor for DA. And it's not too unlike the small stretch that we saw earlier in the season in which Maxi Kleber started getting some time next to Ayton as well. And I thought in those units, the Lakers looked pretty good, or at least gave the opposing teams a different, less predictable look to chew on. And so I feel like we're rounding back into that place, except we have a much younger, or not much younger, but we have a younger version of Maxi Kleber in Drew Timme, even though I don't necessarily think they play alike. Maxi Kleber is more athletic, or at least Maxi Kleber was more athletic in his prime and is still the better defender to this day. But I think Drew Timme just has such a higher ceiling in terms of what he can do offensively, not only for himself, but for the rest of the team, that you can just see, like, it's crazy that I'm saying this about Drew Timme, but the way that he sort of opens up the floor for everybody, because he can be that satellite hub at the top of the 3-point line, like slinging the ball around. So yeah, I have been very impressed. I will continue to eat my crow on the Drew Timme thing. And I like what I've seen with the Lakers deploying 2 bigs out there, even though in that lineup it was more like 3 bigs. But Drew Timme, DeAndre Ayton, that may be a look we see in the future. I would also like to see what a Drew Timme, Jackson Hayes big man unit looks like, because I can envision Drew Timme throwing lobs to Jackson Hayes and that working out very well. Drew Timme does it a lot with Kyler Kelly with the South Bay Lakers. So it would pretty much be the same concept with Jackson Hayes, except amplified, because Jackson Hayes, like, pretty much just poster yams everything nowadays, especially this season. So I would like to see Drew Timme continue to be deployed with these big units, with DeAndre Ayton, with Jackson Hayes. And the last thing I'll say about Timme is I love the intentional way the coaching staff has been utilizing him. The biggest knock I had on Timme and why I wanted Kobe Buffkin to get his 2-way spot was before the Portland game, the coaching staff hadn't played him at all, even in games where Jackson Hayes and DeAndre Ayton were both out. And so in my head, I was like, one, I didn't like Drew Timme's player profile from the outset. I didn't think he fit what this Lakers team, and I didn't think he plugged up a hole that the Lakers needed to plug up with regards to more athleticism, more defense, more rim protection. But on top of that, if the coaching staff wasn't going to play this guy when Jackson Hayes and DeAndre Ayton were down, then why do we have him on a 2-way spot? That was honestly that became my biggest knock on Drew Timme at that point. It's like, it feels very futile that we have this dude on a two-way contract and we're not even using him in the times when you should be giving him a look. Whereas you look at the Memphis Grizzlies and they're signing Christian Coloco to 2 straight 10-day contracts. The Atlanta Hawks need a big man. They just picked up Christian Coloco to another 10-day or to a new 10-day contract. Meanwhile, the guy that you've had on a two-way contract since the end of November can't even play real rotation minutes for you. Then why did we pick up this guy? That was my biggest gripe. But they finally played him on Saturday against Portland. And to their credit, to the coaching staff's credit, they utilized him perfectly. It seemed like they had a real plan for Drew Timme, because the moment he came into the game, it seemed like he had been and I guess he has been practicing with the team for a while, but it seemed like a well-oiled machine with regards to the design sets that he was put in as the trigger man, whipping these passes around to open cutters and guys on the perimeter, and him just like being so disciplined and patient with his screening. I was very impressed. I was like, who is this veteran dude coming in the game right now and changing the entire tenor of the offense and getting us stuck out of the mud? And so I give a large amount of credit to the coaching staff. And that was my biggest worry with Timme. It's like, I knew he was a skilled post player. I knew that he had impeccable footwork and soft touch. I just wasn't sure. I just wasn't sure he was actually going to be utilized correctly if he ever got time with this team. I was like, when are we going to allow this dude to work in the post and have him eat 10 seconds of the shot clock? That's never going to happen. And then the Portland Trailblazers game happens and Drew Timme's in there eating 10 seconds of the shot clock and, throwing the ball out to Rui Hachimura for wide open mid-range jump shots and finding cutters and even getting buckets for himself and barbecue chickening the smaller dudes he was backing down. It was very impressive. It was very eye-opening. And again, credit to Drew Timme for stepping into the moment, hitting all of his shots, but credit to the coaching staff for actually having a legitimate game plan for how to use this dude. And they pretty much catered their offensive system to Drew Timme's skill sets, which is why we saw the best parts of Drew Timme shine, regardless of whether or not he was able to hit his 3-pointers or hit his shots. Like, you just saw the much better movement and flow and rhythm of the offense with that dude out on the court, because Drew Timme is a very smart, connective 5-out hub, and he's a literal satellite lighthouse of a player at the top of the 3-point line or at the top of the key that can facilitate healthy offense and almost force guys to move. So yeah, very impressed by Drew Timme. Let's see. I think that's all I have to say about Drew Timme. If you haven't checked out my breakdown video of his career high breakout game, please check it out on the YouTube channel. Last thing I'll say about all this, just to summarize everything: feed Deandre Ayton, continue to get him involved. Even if he struggles early, keep trying to get him involved. We need him. We need him to score 20 points, if not 20 points, 15 and 10. And then also continue to give Drew Timme these rotation minutes where he is plugged in next to another big man, because I think this is a look that the Lakers can go to more often to sort of, keep opposing teams on their toes. So we don't look as predictable. Our offense isn't as predictable. It isn't simply Luka or LeBron iso ball. It's like, oh, there's this other dude at the top of the key slinging the ball around. There's this other dude on the opposite end of the corner on the weak side who can also post up and is giving us problems. So I'd like to see what Drew Timme in the regular rotation continues to look like. So now we are going to transition away from talking about Deandre Ayton, Drew Timme, and my dog's about to bark, so 1 second. So we're going to transition away from talking about Drew Timme, and we're going to talk about trade targets. And given how much I have talked about Drew in this episode already and everything that I like about Drew, when we return after the break, we are going to try and find ourselves the more reliable veteran Drew Timme, the more reliable, more experienced version of Drew Timme, because even though I like everything that I've seen from Drew, he is still on a two-way contract, and the Lakers are limited in their roster spots. Even if they make a consolidation trade to open up more roster spots, I am not sure whether they're going to standardize any of their two-way players and make them playoff eligible, because they may need those open roster spots for legitimate, veterans who they can rely on. And so, given, it's only been a 2-game sample size, but I think we've also seen this with Maxi Kleber when he has been working for the Lakers. Given how effective at times the Lakers have looked with this stretch 4/stretch 5 and going, double big/twin towers, I would like to account for that. I would like to account for Drew Timme. And so if we were to go to the trade market, what would trading for a Drew Timme-like player look like? The more experienced version of Drew Timme. So I will give you guys 6 options. But before we get to that, I first want to talk to you guys about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. The football playoffs are here, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the gridiron action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick if your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, rushing yards, receptions, and more. Speaking of which, congrats to the LA Rams for pulling off a thrilling overtime win in the snow versus the Bears the other night. The NFL playoffs this year has been completely insane and bonkers. If you don't watch the NFL, now is the time to, casually tune in. But this week on Underdog, I am looking at the Rams versus the Seahawks game next week, and I will be taking Puka Nacua higher than 91.5 receiving yards. He had a muted game in the snow versus the Bears last night. I think he only had like 50-ish yards or so. And I think he'll get back to more of a dominant performance against the Seahawks next week. So higher than 91.5 receiving yards for Nacua. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I will take his wide receiver counterpart, JSN, Jackson Smith Njigba. And I will go with JSN higher than 85.5 receiving yards. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use promo code LEGACY to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code LEGACY. Underdog. Make picks. Win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right, let's pitch it to a couple more sponsors, and when we return, let's get into my 6 trade targets who are like the more experienced version of Drew Timme. All right. All right, so we are back. Let us now look for the professional, veteran, more experienced version of Drew Timme, who we'll be less queasy about counting on in the playoffs when that time comes around. Essentially, the Drew Timme who can do it more consistently and who has proven it. In the same way that earlier on in the season, we saw Nick Smith Jr. win us a couple of games on his own by just getting hot, but then we saw the troubles with relying on a young player like that who's on a 2-way contract. And there were times where I was like, I just wish we could get the more consistent professional bucket getting version of Nick Smith Jr. that's less raw and more reliable. So along that same line of thinking, who is that veteran version of Drew Timme that we can trade for? And honestly, someone who is playoff eligible due to just them being on a standard contract versus a two-way contract. And hopefully they're also playoff tested. But the biggest thing is, how can we trade for the Drew Timme who's on a standard deal and playoff eligible? I do want to caveat everything and say these are not preferred or even priority trade targets. These are last resort consolation prize targets if we strike out on getting our 3-and-D wing, 3-and-D guard, another defensive center or forward. This is more like a luxury case scenario. It's like, hey, how do we back up Drew Timme with the guy who can actually play in the playoffs, and we don't have to worry about whether or not he can hold up in that environment, if we don't end up converting Drew Timme's two-way contract, which is a very real possibility. So again, these are luxury targets, last resort targets. We should still be prioritizing the 3-and-D wing, the 3-and-D guard, even a defensive center or a defensive forward. But below all of those things, how can we find our stretch 5, stretch 4 who can open up the floor for us, has skill, ideally also has some passing chops to them, but can also rebound the ball? All of the names that I'm about to mention, just to give you guys a heads up, they're not great defensively, but they can shoot, they can rebound, and some of them can pass the hell out of the ball, sort of like Drew Timme. So they mitigate their defensive deficiencies or their defensive midness by being super versatile offensively, but also they're just big, which is good because at the very least, if they can't protect the rim, at least they can clean up a possession and gobble up the board. And then sort of like Drew Timme, if you can pair them with another legitimate big man and 7-footer like a Jackson Hayes or a Deandre Ayton, they tend to fare even better and are able to shine in all the ways that they shine offensively. So who is our stretch 4, stretch 5, offensively versatile, more experienced Drew Timme that the Lakers can trade for? I'm going to give you 3 guys in the younger department. I'll give you 3 guys in the veteran department. But essentially, all of these people are more veteran than Drew Timme for obvious reasons. So let us get started. And for my first more experienced Drew Timme spacing big that the Lakers may want to trade for, again, not priority targets, but let's talk about stretch 5 from the Cleveland Cavaliers, former Laker Thomas Bryant. So Thomas Bryant this season is making the veteran minimum. He's making $2.2 million. He's expiring, which the Lakers love because they won't eat into their cap space for this upcoming summer. Thomas Bryant somehow is still only 28 years old, 6'9" with a massive 7'6" wingspan, 248 pounds. It's almost useless for me to tell you his stats with the Cavs because he's had such a limited role, but 4.7 points, 2.6 rebounds, 52% from the field, 34% from 3, 82.8% from the line, 9 minutes a game. I don't know why he hasn't been playing that much for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I just know what Thomas Bryant's skill set is. And even last year with the Indiana Pacers, he was very useful to the Pacers and had, I think, a couple big games for them in the playoffs as well. So Thomas Bryant is a dude who I like TB because, one, he can legitimately space the floor for us, like a Drew Timme. But 2, he's a high motor player who really hustles out there, really goes after 50-50 balls. The Lakers could actually use his hustle, even though I wouldn't say he's like a fundamentally sound defensive stopper. And Thomas Bryant can also rebound the ball as well when he's getting, reps and minutes. And, the last time he was a Laker, he had a pretty good stint. And the reason why he was traded was he wanted a bigger role. So we traded him to the Denver Nuggets. But I wouldn't mind getting Thomas Bryant back. And I would almost love his pairing next to Deandre Ayton, because where Deandre Ayton may be lacking, where Deandre Ayton's energy and focus may be just not there, Thomas Bryant usually always brings the energy and the activity. And so I would love to get Thomas Bryant back, and he would be a pretty cheap margin addition. The Lakers could still presumably get their 3-and-D wing trade. They could still get their 3-and-D guard. And one of their last moves did just trade for an expiring $2.2 million Thomas Bryant on top of that, So he's not exactly, he's actually very dissimilar to Drew Timme. There's not a lot they share in common because Thomas Bryant's pretty athletic. He's much longer than Drew Timme. The only thing right now that makes them somewhat similar is because Drew Timme has been hitting his threes, he's considered a spacing 4/5, and Thomas Bryant is a spacing forward. So that's really the only similarity that they have. But conceptually, having another big man who can space the floor in the likes of Thomas Bryant next to a Deandre Ayton could give us a look that I think is very interesting. It will look very similar to what we saw last night with Drew Timme next to DeAndre Ayton, but may even be more dynamic because Thomas Bryant is physical, athletic, and he's got like just a higher motor. So Thomas Bryant would be my first young, more experienced version of a Drew Timme type. All right. Number 2, let's talk about Jalen Smith out of the Chicago Bulls. So Jalen Smith, not exactly an expiring contract, which probably makes this less ideal for the Lakers because he's making $9 million this year and then will be making $9.4 million next year. So he will eat into their cap space a little bit. So if they don't like Jalen Smith, even though that is a small amount, then they likely won't trade for him. But I will say, I have always been a huge Jalen Smith fan, and he has been doing pretty well for the Chicago Bulls this season. He's started a couple of games for them. And yeah, he's kind of like Thomas Bryant in a lot of ways. This year with the Bulls, he's averaging 9.4 points, 6.8 rebounds, nearly 7 rebounds in just 19 minutes. That's insane. 9 points, 6.8 rebounds, 1.4 assists, 46% from the field, 34% from 3, 74% from the stripe. Again, Jalen Smith is one of these, I wouldn't necessarily call him a rim protector, but he's athletic. He's quick off the ground, explosive at times. I also really like his motor. Pretty much a lot of the things that I said for Thomas Bryant apply to Jalen Smith, and he is also that knockdown three-point shooter. It is kind of funny, like if we did somehow trade for Jalen Smith, I believe Jalen Smith and DeAndre Ayton were teammates on the Suns, and I believe Jalen Smith would have supplanted DeAndre Ayton at some point if the Suns hadn't pulled the plug on him early. But even though Jalen Smith never lived up to his lotto pick pedigree, I believe he was like the number 10th pick of the Suns, he has rounded himself into being a very serviceable stretch 4, stretch 5 for the previous teams that he's been on, whether that's been the Indiana Pacers or now the Chicago Bulls. So I would definitely give Jalen Smith a look, much in the same way that I would give Thomas Bryant a look, mainly because of his motor as well. So keep a lookout for Jalen Smith. I think that's all I have to say about Smith. Yeah, he's still only 25 years old, which I like. 6'9", 7 foot plus wingspan. Yeah, the only problem with this Jalen Smith thing is, again, that he has $9 million on the books for next year, which, the Lakers likely only want to trade for expirings or team options or non-guaranteed contracts or guys who have non-guaranteed contracts this upcoming summer. So that would make a deal less likely. But if the Lakers somehow decide that they're willing to take on $9 million next summer, then Jalen Smith would be a target that I would be looking at. So, all right. Let's move on to my last youngish stretch 4, stretch 5 in the Drew Timme vein. And this one is going to kind of be a pipe dream target. It's going to come from left field. But if you were looking for the Pelinka special of someone who you didn't even know was available, someone you didn't see coming, then I would put this guy in that category. So let's talk about Santi Aldama from the Memphis Grizzlies. So want to reiterate, not realistic, but could be a sneaky pipe dream target, especially if the Memphis Grizzlies decide to totally reshuffle the deck and blow things up. So Santi Aldama is making $18 million this year, $17 million next year, which again, like Jalen Smith, complicates things, except he'd be making, almost double Jalen Smith's salary. So the Lakers would really have to like Santi Aldama. But $18 million this year, $17 million next summer, and then a club option in 2027-28 for $17 million. So essentially, Santi Aldama is an expiring contract next summer. And I don't think a bad one, because in 2 or 3 years' time, the full mid-level exception will be at around $17 million. So just equate Santi Aldama with being like a full mid-level exception guy. So I think Santi Aldama has more in common with Drew Timme than, some of the previous guys I mentioned in Thomas Bryant and Jalen Smith. But I really like Santi Aldama's offensive game. He's still only 25 years old. He is a almost legitimate 7-footer, 7 foot in height, 215 pounds. So he's pretty slight in frame. But this season with the Memphis Grizzlies, Santi Aldama is averaging 14 points, 6.7 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.9 steals, 0.7 blocks, 47.8% from the field, 34.9% from a three, doing all of that in 28 minutes per game. And I just like how well-rounded that line is. That is essentially like a Drew Timme with the South Bay Lakers line. 6.7 rebounds, 3 assists. He can dish the rock. He can dish the rock and facilitate a little bit. I'm actually surprised by the 0.9 steals and 0.7 blocks. So showing off a little bit of feistiness and scrappiness on the defensive end of the floor as well. But mainly with Santi Aldama, you are trading for him because he's super offensively versatile. Even though he's only shooting 35% from three, he is a knockdown 3-point shooter. He is a spacer for you. And I like that he can actually rebound the ball and pass. So he's almost like the thinner, slighter version of Drew Timme, who won't take it down into the post as much, but he can definitely space the floor for you. And again, this is more of a pipe dream target if the Memphis Grizzlies decide to blow things up, and if the Lakers were willing to take back, more long-term salary that eats into their cap space this summer. But if there were any player that I would be okay with eating into our cap space next summer, it would be a youngish player like Santi Aldama, who has a really high offensive ceiling. So that is the third guy in my list of younger stretch 4, stretch 5 bigs in the same vein as Drew Timme. Before I get to my final 3 names, which are all older guys, there is one last wildcard target that I want to bring up. And that guy is the Chicago Bulls, Zach Collins. You guys know, if you've been following my page, you would know my affinity for Zach Collins. The only reason why I'm not making him a legitimate target in today's list is because he's still injured. He has been injured for much of this season. He's dealing with like a bad toe/foot injury, and his return date is indefinite. So I don't think you can count on Zach Collins this season. And so, unfortunately, yeah, we have to cross Zach Collins off our list, even though on paper, Zach Collins would sort of be like, for me, the ideal sort of scrappy stretch 4, stretch 5 that I would want the Lakers to take on. He's also on an expiring $17 million contract. But because he has been so injured this season, it doesn't make sense for us to trade for him. Maybe we sign him for cheap for the veteran minimum in the summer, but in terms of trading any real assets for him, I do not think Zach Collins is in the cards, unfortunately for me. All right, so let's round things out and end this episode with 3 veteran names, older guys who fit the Drew Timme, more experienced Drew Timme archetype. And let's talk about another Chicago Bull. Let's talk about Nikola Vucevic. This guy is the Michael Jordan of all stretch 4, stretch 5s. Nikola Vucevic, popular Lakers trade target from last season. Everybody wanted to trade Rui Hachimura for him. Now Nikola Vucevic is on an expiring $21.4 million. So that changes the equation, because that is the type of contract that the Lakers would want to get in on, because they have no commitment to a dude like that. But also Nikola Vucevic is also just very offensively talented. Now, if you were following my page last season, you would also know that I made a video talking about how terrible Nikola Vucevic is on defense and how the Lakers absolutely should not be trading Rui Hachimura for him. But things have changed, because if the Bulls decide to finally lower their asking prices, their ridiculous asking prices on all of their players, and they decide to let go of Nikola Vucevic, and all the Lakers would have to give up would be Gabe Vincent and Maxi Kleber, that actually works out financially. Maybe they toss in Dalton Connect as a sweetener. If you're telling me we can just add Nikola Vucevic to this team without giving up anyone of consequence, seeing as to how effective Drew Timme, a two-way player out of the G League, has been in his limited amount of time, now I'm all the way around sold on a Nikola Vucevic to the Lakers, trade. Nikola Vucevic, 35 years old, former USC Trojan, fight on. I went to USC at the same time Nikola Vucevic was playing for the USC basketball team, so you can guess my age. Nikola Vucevic, 6'9", 6'10" in height, 265 pounds, already played 14 years in the NBA. Great career. Somehow this season still averaging 17 points per game, 9.2 rebounds, nearly 4 assists, 3.8 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.6 blocks, 50% from the field, 37% from three, 80% from the stripe. And this is the Michael Jordan of all Drew Timme types. And if the Lakers can nab him for very little in assets, I would 100% be on board and finally get a guy like him. So I'm seeing some comments here. No, Nikola, he is not a good fit with Luka. Guys, Drew Timme, we see the benefits of having a guy like Drew Timme grease the wheels for us offensively. Just think about what the Super Saiyan version of Drew Timme would look like on this team that needs so much offensive help. The biggest, most underreported story this season for the Lakers is not the defense. We already knew coming into the season that the Lakers would be bad defensively. What we didn't know was that they'd be bad offensively as well, and that the bench would need so much help offensively to the point where a two-way G League player named Drew Timme, who doesn't play any defense but can do a lot offensively, is helping the team out and breathing life into this stifled, suffocating offense. And so that is why I am 100%, not 100%, but that is why I am all the way bought in on a Nikola Vucevic trade. If he is our last resort trade, we strike out everywhere else and we're like, what do we do with Gabe Vincent and Maxi Kleber's expirings? What if we can trade for Nikola Vucevic? To me, it's a no-brainer. You get a 17-9 guy. The other thing that Nikola Vucevic does outside of facilitating, passing, spacing the floor is he's not going to rim protect for you, but if everybody else does what they're supposed to do, Nikola Vucevic can clean up the glass. I mean, he's at career average of 9 rebounds per game. So rebounding is another thing that the Lakers desperately need. And even though he's not a good defensive player, rebounding, as we all know, is a big part of the defensive end of the floor. And that just so happens to be something Nikola Vucevic is good at. So that is why someone who made a video about why the Lakers shouldn't trade for Nikola Vucevic last season, why I am willing to trade for him this season, because the contexts have changed and we have seen a positive proof of concept of what a Nikola Vucevic type player would look like on the Lakers. And apparently that player has a role, especially if the coaching staff is going to be as intentional as they have been in catering to this type of satellite 5-out hub big man. All right. Moving on from Nikola Vucevic, let's talk about Kelly Olynyk from the San Antonio Spurs. So if you guys have followed this channel, you would also know that I have had a long-standing love affair for the lunch lady, Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk, 34 years old. I had no idea that he was actually younger than Nikola Vucevic. Kelly Olynyk, 7 foot in height, 240 pounds, 12 years of service in the NBA. I'm not even bothering to put up his stats with the Spurs because he's playing such a limited role with them. He's their third big man and sometimes maybe even fourth behind Bismack Biyombo. But anyways, you guys know Kelly Olynyk's skill set. He is also, let's see, if Nikola Vucevic is the Michael Jordan's is the Michael Jordan of all Drew Timmes, Kelly Olynyk is probably like the Kobe Bryant of Drew Timmes. I know that sounds blasphemous that I'm saying like Michael Jordan is better than Kobe, but yeah, Nikola Vucevic is the Michael Jordan of all Drew Timmes. Well, Kelly Olynyk is the Kobe Bryant of Drew Timmes. He's the next best thing. Kelly Olynyk in his career, 10 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.4 blocks, 48% from the field, 37% from three. Spacer on the floor, great 5-out hub, screens well, passes well, great connective playmaker. He's also, even though you wouldn't consider him a defensive stopper or rim protector by any means, he's scrappy, he's physical. Some would call him dirty if you think back to his time, almost tearing Kevin Love's arm socket out in the playoffs. But Kelly Olynyk, scrappy, fights on defense, he's physical, and he is just, the professional version of Drew Timme. The guy who can space the floor, can get hot from three, but also facilitate the offense for you, will do all the little things. And I've always been a huge Kelly Olynyk fan. And, I can't lie. Drew Timme's Portland Trailblazer game was pretty much Kelly Olynyk in a nutshell. I actually think Timme is probably more skilled in the post, if we're just talking about straight post footwork and isolation, than Kelly Olynyk. But in terms of the intangibles and all of the connective things that both players can do, I really have always liked Kelly Olynyk. So that would be another obvious, like more experienced version of Drew Timme that the Lakers could trade for on the cheap, because Kelly Olynyk is on an expiring $13.4 million contract. Again, that's another benefit to the Lakers because he's expiring. It's a very short-term commitment for them. They probably won't have to give up too many assets. So I would love to bring in Kelly Olynyk if we can, but I don't think the Lakers and Spurs have made a trade in forever. So it would probably have to be some sort of like 3-team trade where the Lakers are just like, squeezing their way in there and asking, hey, can we get Kelly Olynyk while you guys, do your trade for whichever players you want? So that's a scenario where I could see the Lakers maybe trying to finagle their way into a 3-team trade between the Spurs and another team, and just trying to get Kelly Olynyk as some sort of, collateral positive trade piece. All right. My last and final target. This is going to be kind of surprising, and you will be surprised by what he's doing this season. But my last and final, more professional version of Drew Timme, more professional, veteran, experienced version of Drew Timme would be Jusuf Nurkic out of the Utah Jazz. So Jusuf Nurkic is having a bang out year for the Jazz in Walker Kessler's absence. So Nurkic is 31 years old, 6'11" in height. He's a big boy, 290 pounds. His body makeup, his dad bod, is kind of similar to Drew Timme. He's taller than Drew Timme, for one thing, though. But this season with the Jazz, he's kind of having a bit of a resurgent year. If Nikola Vucevic is the Michael Jordan of Drew Timme's and Kelly Olynyk is the Kobe Bryant of Drew Timme's, then Jusuf Nurkic would be the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders of Drew Timme's. I don't know. I don't know what comp we want to go with, but all that to say, Jusuf Nurkic, even though he's slow as hell, and clearly not as effective as he was in his prime, he's still very good at what he does, and he's still very good at being offensively versatile. This season with the Jazz, he's averaging 10.4 points, 10 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.4 blocks in just 26 minutes, shooting 50% from the field, 36% from three. I don't know what's going on at the stripe, 55.6% from the line. I don't think he's ever been a really good three-point shooter, but anyways, resurgent year for Jusuf Nurkic. He's done a lot of good things for the Jazz, filling in for Walker Kessler. And if we can bring him in as a backup big, playing the Drew Timme role, I mean, we're set for the playoffs, man. Like, clearly he's not the defensive center we would want, but in terms of that 5-out facilitating hub connective piece and somebody who also plays very physically, Yusuf Nurkic is a physical, bulky player. Yeah. Out of anybody that I've mentioned today, he probably reminds me the most of Drew Timme. No, maybe Kelly Olynyk. But anyways, all that to say, I would love it if we could get Yusuf Nurkic. At the beginning of the season, I had Nurkic pegged as a potential buyout candidate, but given the fact that he's been so good for the Utah Jazz, depending on what direction the Jazz want to go with the rest of their athleticism, I would be, if they're willing to trade him, I would be down to trade. I would be down to trade for Yusuf Nurkic because again, he fits the profile of all of the guys that we've been talking about in this section. Mountain Skies, I keep saying in your comment, Nurkic is the no athleticism, immobile old guy they don't need. No, not in the premise of this show. We've been talking about immobile, non-athletic dudes who are offensively versatile, can space the floor and facilitate an offense. We're not looking for these guys to play defense or be explosive for us, you know? We're looking for them to be better than Drew Timme. And if Drew Timme has a spot and a role on this team, if you can get the better, more experienced version of Drew Timme, who's actually playoff eligible, then that player has a role. I'm not expecting these guys to have a consistent 25 minutes per game, although maybe Nikola Vucevic, if we traded for him, would have to be, you know, consistently in that role. But we've seen where this works. If you put them next to a Deandre Ayton, if you flank them with other physical athletic guys like a Vando, it can work because they help out so much on the offensive end of the floor. They actually help us out defensively by allowing us to put the ball in the basket more oftentimes and forcing the opposing team to take the ball out of the net so that we can set our defense. Our biggest problem has been transition defense all year. And if you can tell me that we get these slow-ass dudes who can help us out on the offense, put more balls into the basket, that by default helps us out defensively, even though they themselves don't help out defensively, if that makes any sense. So anyways, that'll do it for my 6 Drew Timme targets. Again, these are not preferred targets. These are not priority targets. These are luxury targets if we strike out on everybody else in terms of 3-and-D wing, 3-and-D guard, defensive center. The last person that I'll say, this is more of a wild card in the same vein as the Zach Collins thing that I brought up earlier, but Kristaps Porzingis of the Atlanta Hawks, he would be an interesting stretch 5 option for the Lakers, especially because he's played with Luka Doncic before. The only reason why he's not a part of this list is one, because he's been perpetually injured with some ambiguous injuries. And 2, his contract is so big that we would have to send out Rui Hachimura for him. And maybe some fans would actually be okay with sending Rui out for an expiring flyer like Kristaps Porzingis, if Kristaps Porzingis can play the rest of the way. Having said that, Kristaps is not a realistic option because the Lakers rarely ever take a chance or take a flyer on these injury-prone, banged-up players. So anyways, with that said, that pretty much does it for my list of professional veteran versions of Drew Timme. Let me see. Do I have anything else? So to recap, on the younger end of the spectrum, if you're looking at stretch 4s, stretch 5s, Thomas Bryant, Jalen Smith, Pipe Dream, Santi Aldama. If you're looking at veteran options, you're looking at Nikola Vucevic, Yusuf Nurkic, Kelly Olynyk. And yeah, I don't think this is the route the Lakers are going to go, but the more and more they continue to play Drew Timme, and again, I know it's only a small sample size of 2 games, but if he continues to prove himself to be a key cog in the offense, then the Lakers will surely have to account for him, and not necessarily account for him in terms of, yeah, let's just rely on Drew Timme the rest of the way. I personally don't want them to rely on Drew Timme the rest of the way because, again, he's on a 2-way contract, and I have severe doubts that they convert him into a standard deal just so that he's playoff eligible. Because would you feel confident going into a round 1 playoff series against the Timberwolves or round 2 against the Wolves and deploying Drew Timme out there? I wouldn't be. So in that case, we need to account for Drew Timme if he continues this like little role that he has going on. We need to account for Drew Timme by getting, again, the more experienced veteran playoff tested version of him. And I just gave you guys a list of some of those players, young and old. But most of all, Drew Timme aside, we need to keep feeding the dude on this show agenda, Deandre Ayton. Feed him the ball. 9-0 whenever Deandre Ayton scores 20 plus points. 12-0 whenever Deandre Ayton puts 15 and 10 up. We need to get this. We need to keep this guy engaged. We need to keep him locked in. Yes, it is sort of like dealing with a child, having to spoon feed him, but we have to KYP, know our own personnel, and work with what we've got, because DeAndre has still been a very good bargain big for us. And if we want him to continue to exceed his value for us, then we need to meet him in the middle. So with that said, that'll do it for this live. Thank you guys for putting up with all of the technical difficulties at the beginning and me blacking out on MLK Day, no less. I guess that's fitting, as one of the commenters said early on. Thank you guys for watching. Please remember to like this video, mash the hype button, comment down below. Most importantly, please hit subscribe. If you have made it this far and you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, what are you doing, fam? Please hit subscribe. And thank you guys in the chat for keeping it alive. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate the support. Yeah, that'll do it. This has been Jonathan Hernandez of the Lakers Legacy Podcast, and I will catch you guys next time. Happy MLK Day. Peace out.